What's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Weekend Golfer, the podcast where everyday golfers like you and me, we get our voice. And today we're just going to be talking about simplifying the game. We don't need to kind of focus on so many of these things that we may have. We watch YouTube videos, things of that nature, and we come to the golf course and we have like 47 different swing thoughts that we're thinking. We don't need that. We don't need to be trying to hit shots that the pros do, because for one, they're pros and we're not. The main thing is that we just need to have a few things down that are consistent enough to help us move that scorecard in a better position for us. So today we're going to be talking about the 3 shots that are the most, or that matter the most for us as weekend golfers. And if you're excited about that, definitely stay tuned. All right, so first and foremost, when we're talking about simplifying the game, and for one, that sounds so much more easier said than done. Obviously, I get that. But there's so many things that we think about or we're running through in our minds when it comes to the game of golf that I feel like the smallest amount of things, or the smallest amount of thoughts that we're having, can make it that much more better. Most of us as amateurs, as weekend golfers, we try to get good at everything. We try to be good at the flop shot. We try to be good at hitting it off the tee. We try to be good at being able to hit around a tree. There's so many different things that we're trying to do that most of the time we probably don't really see too much often on a golf course. We're trying to hit high fades, low draws, maybe that stinger shot. If you have a stinger shot, by all means, power to you. But at the end of the day, your scoring is not going to be reflected off of how highlighted your round is. And what I mean by that is your highlight shots, those shots that you probably would never hit more than one time in your lifetime, that's not going to necessarily always affect your scoring, because you can hit a flop shot at one point, and then the next round you go hit it that same shot again, and you thin it, and now instead of flighting that ball in the air, you've shot it straight across the green. So it's about trying to eliminate the big mistakes. The basic way I can say is that weekend golf isn't about mastering everything. It is about managing what matters. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to just be talking about 3 things that I feel that would just kind of help us truly just simplify the game as best as possible. First off, it's the most probably important shot you'll ever hit. It's the one that is always consistent. And I was trying to also, when I was thinking of this, trying to think of 3 shots that are more common than not that we see in our average, in our rounds. So the number 1 is obviously your tee shot being in play. The first thing I think is really important about that is, for one, it's obvious. If you're not in play, then you're putting yourself behind and you're losing strokes on the golf course. If you're bombing at 280, but it is to the right or to the left, and you're behind some trees, and now you got to play out because you don't even have a shot to get to the green, was it really worth it? So it's all about trying to keep that tee shot as consistent as possible and also in play. And some key things about that is, obviously we want to land in the fairway, but also, is your ball even still playable? If you may have like a very open golf course, is your ball in a position to where you can still kind of get out of where you are? If you're in the rough, or you're in maybe some side area, if you're near the cart path, is it a space that you can still get out? So is the ball still playable? Or are you putting yourself in playable situations versus just consistently in the fairway? And maybe that's a club choice. Maybe that is a thing that, maybe if you're using a 3-wood or a hybrid instead of your driver, maybe that's something that might be better for you. I know for myself, my driver is always up and down. For a good bit, it was my 3-wood, which was really interesting that my driver was consistent, but my 3-wood was not. So that's something that, I've been trying to take my time available that I have to really work on what is the dispersion rate of my driver, to make sure that from a field of 40-50 yards from left to right, what's the widespread of my shot? If it's past the 55 yards, that's a major issue. But if my dispersion rate, if I can keep it tight to where my ball is consistently landing in the same area, the same place, then I know that I can take that to the golf course and realize that I'm going to be within a range of 55, or maybe for like most of us, it's 100 yards that our drivers are kind of going back and forth there. So maybe it's that. There's another thing that I've heard where you want to focus on more of your scoring distance, not your ego distance. Your ego distance is exactly how it sounds. It's your ego. Every guy, every person that is playing with a group of friends, you obviously want to be the one that outdrives everybody. It's a good thing. It's an ego stroking thing. It's fine. But if you hit your shot the furthest and yet you come in with the worst score on the hole out of everybody in your group, was it really fun? I'd much rather have a par or something better than worrying about if I outdrove everybody by 40 yards and I still walked away with a bogey or a double. Like that's not necessarily what we would want to go for. We want to enjoy the game, but we also want to be good at it. If you're athletic, if you're competitive, especially in this game of golf, like, you want to be good at it. You don't want to just be going out and just, I mean, at that point, it's just hitting a golf ball, spending your money to hit a golf ball and play and do all those things. And it's not necessarily, you're not getting anything out of it in that capacity. But if you are trying to be, better, you're trying to improve, be competitive, then maybe focusing more on what scoring distance may look like. If you know that you can put the ball, if you're at about 150 or less in, if you know you're pretty consistent from like 165 to 150, then maybe that's what you're thinking every time you're getting on that tee box, and you're saying, okay, hey, this is a 304 yard par 4, but I know that I'm good within 100 or 150 yards, so I'm just going to play like maybe a 4-iron or a 6-iron to just get me 180 yards in, so that way I can get myself in a better position to play my next shot. So it's a lot of those things, but it's more of the scoring distance, not just stroking the ego to try to drive the hole in one. We don't need perfect drives. We just need to be in a position to have a playable hole. So if you have a driver that is causing you to gain more strokes than you're losing, then that may be an issue that you want to address, or maybe attempt to do something different off the tee, because that can change the way you're scoring the round. If your driver is just causing you 2 strokes by itself, you already know that if even par is 74, you're going to be 2 strokes above every time you use that driver, because it's adding strokes to your play, because you're not hitting it or putting it in a position to be playable, in which most of us do. I, for one, if you guys have watched my video of when I've played on the range, or if I went to the last time I went to the Mulligan's Golf Club here in Concord to play Pebble Beach, there was a lot of drives, a lot of tee shots that were not going the right way. So that's one thing that I think that is very key about how we're setting ourselves up, is we have to make sure that our tee shot, number one, our tee shot is in play. All right, so that was the first shot that we wanted to talk about, but the second one is going to be where right after we're putting ourselves from our tee shot, that average area that we're putting ourselves in, which is going to be our approach, probably inside 150. So all of us know that 150 stick that we're kind of aiming for, that we're trying to get close to whenever we are playing our golf games, and so that shot I do feel is very important for us to make sure that we have, for one, consistency over it, but also primarily even confidence over where we are hitting from. There's a lot to the mental aspects of golf, which I do want to do another full episode on that. But a little bit of it here is just having that simple confidence to stand over the ball, knowing, okay, if I'm 145 or 130, whatever my number is, if I'm in this spot, I know that I can get it on the green every single time. And for one, this is a place that we can really improve ourselves, or we can really hurt ourselves and make ourselves bleed, is that approach shot inside 150. Because for most of us, we may not necessarily have the proper control that we want to have with like our wedges, or maybe even if it is a pitching wedge, or maybe even a 9. But making sure that we have control over what we're trying to do and over the club as well as the ball. And a lot of different things. When I think of this, I always think about the very first hole here in Charlotte. We have a golf course called Charles T. Myers. If you're in the Charlotte area, I'm pretty sure you guys know it. But on that very first hole, the 150 mark sits right in the middle, and the hole kind of bends slightly a little bit, but it goes uphill. So initially, I'm already thinking, okay, if I can get it around the 150, 145 mark, I'm good. But the green also has a lot of different, it has a small undulation of a heel towards the backside where it goes up. And typically every time I've gone out there, the pin has always been in the front, so it's trying to drain back down. And if you don't get far enough, you land off. So one of the things that I always do with this is try to just stay confident and controlled as I'm hitting the ball to the green. But secondly, what I wanted to hit on was making sure that I stick to the middle of the green. It's like that middle of the green strategy. Oftentimes I feel like as weekend golfers, we do not do this. A lot of times we're pin hunting, and it's not a bad thing, but that is something that really can make or break if we actually stay on the green, or if we're moving on now to a like chip shot, or we got a bump and run or something like that. But aiming for the middle of the green gives you the best percentage as far as landing on the green in regulation and putting yourself in a position on a par 4 to 2 putt to make a par, on a par 3 to 2 putt to make a par as well, and on a par 5 potentially, if you get there, and if you're able to get there in the distance, then you can possibly even put yourselves to 3 putt for a par. So, but again, if you're on the green, or what we call, if you're dancing, like that is where you want to be by the time that you get to your second or third shot, depending upon if it's a par 3, 4, or 5. But it's a good process and a good notion of thought to have, is just aiming for the middle of the green. Another thing that you might possibly need to do is club up. Maybe if you know that, okay, I'm usually always landing around 150, 145 or somewhere around there, but it's like right in between your clubs. I always push for the notion of clubbing up. If there's ever in a position where the yardage is kind of between a club or not, like if I'd say, if it's like 142, that is like probably between a pitching wedge and a 9 for me. Typically I would go pitching wedge, but just in case, depending upon like that first hole at Charles T. Myers, if it's a little uphill, I may go for a 9 and take a little bit off of the swing. Or if it's a little bit downhill, it may change. But clubbing up is always a good perspective to have, because then again, you remember, if you're aiming for the middle of the green, you're not so worried about if the pin is showing at 140 but the back of the green is showing 170. So that's 30 yards worth of distance that you have to work with. And even if you play it at about 150, you're still on the side of coming in versus going too far. So it's a good thing, and it's a good thing to possibly club up. It's not so much that and again, it kind of goes back to that ego thing. I feel like with a lot of us as weekend golfers, we have a certain confidence. We all have egos. We all have pride. We also want to play the game well. But I think the mindset that we have going into it, of being as consistent as possible and aiming for the places that give us a high percentage of making those putts, is a better off chance of trying to get it really close to the hole, and then or believing that it's close to the hole, and then by the time you get up there, it's 40 yards past the hole anyway. So again, I think our approach shot within 150 yards is probably that second most important shot that we want to have the consistency and confidence in. We aim for the middle, we swing it smooth, and we accept anywhere between 25 feet worth of a putt. I take that every day versus having the inconsistencies of a 55-yard putt, a 2-yard putt, a 13-yard putt. Like, I'm practicing all these putts, but I'm not building myself in a place to be as consistent as possible to help, because then now I'm practicing all these putts that I don't normally ever practice on the putting green at the beginning of the round, because most of the time we're putting and practicing the ones that are close, ones that may be a little bit of a downhill, but it's a lot, but I want to save that for the mental aspect of the game. But first important shot is our tee shot being in play. Secondly is how important our approach shot is inside 150 yards. So stay tuned for the third. Hey, I want to let you in on a secret. First and foremost, we all know golf clubs, golf everything, anything golf related, it's expensive. But it doesn't have to be, because if you're using Cactus Golf Club, it doesn't even have to be at all. So I just want to let you know, for $5 a month, you get access to discounts on all your favorite apparel, your favorite accessories that you use when you go play golf. If you want to look real nice on the shoe game, you get a discount on your shoes. Golf balls as well, because we all know we be losing those. And all the latest golf tech. So if you're always buying your golf gear and you're like, why is this stuff so expensive? I got a deal for you. So I want you to use this link, cactusgolfclub.com/CMiller, and for $5 a month, you get major discounts, saving almost up to average of about $200 a year on all of your favorite golf apparel, your favorite shoes, golf balls, anything that you need. You got to be using Cactus Golf Club. So the link's down below. All right, so our third important shot Let me guess. I wonder how many of you are thinking actually the putter, how well we're putting. I'd actually do not want to go with the putter if you were thinking that. It is important to be able to putt really well because at the end of the day, you drive for show and you putt for dough. However, if you're driving for show and you're not getting in the place to putt for dough, then it's not even really worth it. So, what I actually wanted to discuss on our third shot that I feel like that matters the most is that 30 to 40 yard pitch or chip shot. This kind of comes from what we were talking about before in the second shot, because in those events that we may not hold the green or we may miss the green, which I feel as weekend golfers most of the time, we're not as consistent with greens in regulation. This is a good thing to kind of separate us from our scores getting too bad. I feel like this is a real scoring separator here, because typically, like I said, we miss greens sometimes. Our shot can turn for the worse, and now we're looking at a bogey or a double. But I think even if we're not on the green in two, if we have a good quality chip shot, whether it's a bump and run or something else that's very simple that we can repeat more times than not, if we have something that's going to put us in that 10 feet range of a putt, then that's what we need to work with. So with the chip or the putt, a lot of different ways to do it. I first and foremost would say I would avoid trying to do those flop shots. Or those like hop flops, however you want to call it. Reason why. When we see it on the tour, or when we see the pros do it, the grass that they're hitting off of has been cured and has been processed for all of these guys to come out, and it's like pristine grass. Unless you're part of a club or anything like that, majority of us that are going out and doing like our little gambit of different golf courses that we go play, I can guarantee that most of them are not really conducive. The ground is not really conducive for you to be able to hit a really good flop shot. I know in our area, the grounds tend to be a little bit hard, especially if it has not rained in a little while, or if they're not doing the proper whatever. I'm not a groundskeeper, but if they're not doing everything that needs to be done to make sure the grass is flush and everything like that, it's not going to happen. And what you may think is a good flop shot that you practice on the driving range, which was on a mat, by the way, you get on the grass that is probably a half a centimeter thick, and you hit a flop shot and realize now you've thinned it because all you hit was dirt. It turns you around into a completely different game. So I at this point, I avoid kind of any type of flop shots unless I know, like, okay, I got a lot of rough, I got a lot of grass that I can cut under and get to it. I'm typically not, I don't even think the last time I can remember using my 60-degree wedge for that specific reason. But a bump and run shot is really good to have in the bag. Just a simple, whether if you use like a 9 or an 8, just a nice little putting stroke to kind of get enough little loft on it to get it off the ground, and a nice little rollout to get you within hopefully 10 feet. This is really kind of the mark that you want to get within and get comfortable putting within 10 feet of the hole. But a bump and run shot is really good to have. I know even my dad uses it. He actually uses it sometimes with his hybrid. Same putting stroke, but he'll use his hybrid to kind of get that same push and loft depending upon how far away he is from the green. But that 30, 40 yard chip shot or pitch shot, keeping it as simple as possible. I think it is a big difference between our score being a bogey and a double versus being able to salvage maybe a bad shot on the approach and come away with a par, at worst case a bogey. But I think it's a good thing to have. Again, avoiding those hero shots, because none of us are being able to hit on these type of grounds, again, unless you're at a club that is taking care of their grass year in and year out. The main focus we really want to have is just getting it on the green and giving ourselves a putt relatively within 15 to 10 feet that you feel the most comfortable with. Our short game doesn't need to be flashy. It just really needs to be predictable, because anything that we can have that is predictable and consistent, we know that we're going to start seeing that score continuously come down. All right, so wrapping all this up here, just the takeaways that we have from this. So the first shot that we were talking about that really matters the most is putting our tee shot into play. Anytime that we're in good position to be able to stay consistent, it sets the mark, and it sets the pace for every hole that we're going to play. So no matter if we just scored a bogey, we get on a par 3 and we put it within 5 feet of the hole, that tee shot matters as much as anything else to put us in a good position. So your tee shot being in play. Secondly, our hitting the green once we're inside 150, making sure that we're consistent, hitting for that middle of the green. We don't want to necessarily always go pin hunting because the pin can never always tell us the story. But if you aim for the middle of the green, you give yourself a consistent shot to possibly have, as well as a putt relatively 25 feet or within, because usually the middle of the green is not too far away from that. But then lastly, in the event that we do happen to miss the green in regulation, then we want to make sure that we have a simple chip shot that can put us right to the hole or little middle of the green, whatever the case may be, but can keep us within that 10 to 15 foot window to make ourselves put a better position for a putt, to save par, whatever the case may be. So, and again, I think these are just 3 things that I would recommend that keeps us from trying to master everything. I'm absolutely no master. I've been playing golf for 12 years at this point, and to this day I still have not even had a hole in one. But for these same simple things of now making sure that my tee shots are in play, making sure that my green shots to get in on regulation, I'm putting myself in a position to do that. And then also, even if the event that I don't, maybe a chip shot for a birdie, I will take that every day, compared to, missing the green and now I'm 2-putting or 3-putting just to save a bogey or a double bogey. So a lot, just again, these are small little tips just to help out. We don't need so many different things that going through our minds of where our hands are, this, that, and that. Like, at the end of the day, those things are good, but it's not helpful for you when you're out on the golf course playing 18 holes and every time you swing it's different. The main thing about golf is consistency. What can you repeat well enough to make sure that your scores are coming low? And with that, I actually want to issue a challenge for you guys as well. So everybody that's listening, everybody that's watching possibly on YouTube, appreciate you first and foremost nonetheless. But here's the challenge that I want you to do. Whether you use 18 birdies, I'm trying to think of all these other apps that we have out here, the Grint, I think it's called, whatever the case may be, whatever golf app that you use to keep track of your scores. If it gives you the capability of tracking your fairways in regulation, or if you hit the fairway, your green in regulation, I felt like I don't know if y'all could see this, I'm sorry, I just did the Donald Trump hands, that was really weird. But the challenge that I have is on 18 birdies, whatever your app may be, tracking your rounds through the rest of the year. If it gives you those detailed stats that you can track, as far as if your tee shot is left, if your tee shot is right, if it is straight in the middle, track that. If it tracks where your green in regulation is, or did you miss right, did you miss left, did you miss long, did you miss short, like, keep track of all of that, so that way over the course of the year, by the time right now this recording, this is like February, so middle towards the end of February, if you can get from March to November before it kind of gets to that wintry time, depending upon where you are, but track all your golf rounds from the rest of the year until it's time to shut down for the off season, and just see the progression. Like, I feel like this will be really good for all of us to see the progression that we have in our golf game, to see, okay, hey, in the first, few rounds of the year, the first 5, I'm a data analyst guy, so I feel like 5 rounds is always the best number to start with, because it gives you a wide range, a small range, but it gives you a good enough data to be able to catch medians and ranges and averages and all that stuff. But 5 rounds, you can see how your first 5 rounds are compared to your last 5 rounds. If you play enough golf, then this is going to be really beneficial for you. But I just want to kind of see, what happens, or what we can see in our golf rounds, depending upon what we do when we track it. Because if we can improve our game and realize that we've saved strokes by making sure that we put our ball in play, making sure that we aim for the middle of the green, putting it just on the green to make sure that we're on the green in regulation, and we start giving ourselves opportunities to fix, or to give ourselves 2 putts. And then even if it is a case to where you're consistently hitting the middle of the green, but you're still walking away with bogey, double bogey, now you know that your putting needs to be fixed. You need to practice putting from whatever distance that may be. And that's what I think is really cool about these little tidbits, is because if you build these 3 things in a consistent manner, it helps improve the rest of the game, because now you're seeing what needs to be adjusted, what needs to be fixed. So again, my challenge to you all, start tracking your rounds as much detail as possible from now until the end of the year and see how well your progression happens, whether your score improves, your quality of rounds improve, whatever the case may be. But I'm just really curious to see what improves for you. So if you're down for the challenge, let me know. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our podcast. First and foremost, I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. If this has been helpful to you in any way, definitely leave a like or a comment down below. Send this podcast to any of your golfing friends so they can listen to it. I appreciate all the support and the love. And if you are already not a part of the Weekend Golfer Clubhouse that we have on Facebook, it's our Facebook group. If you're not a part of that, let me know. I will send you the link. The main goal for this whole thing is just to build what we know as the clubhouse to be. The clubhouse is basically a way for everybody to kind of come together after their golf rounds, for most of us as weekend golfers, after a day of work, whatever the case may be, share tidbits, share stories, share videos, all these things to just kind of show our progression, what we want to talk about, small things like that. Clubhouse is just kind of, again, a nice little community way of just for all of us to be able to hang out virtually in the best way possible. So once you guys join the clubhouse, I will leave a link down below if you're watching this on YouTube. Let me know. I can send you guys the link as well. The main thing also was going to be cool is that I want to be able to start doing some little tournaments. So if you have like a driving range that has with the top tracer technology, doing some tournaments where we do like maybe a long drive challenge or closest to the pin challenge, or maybe even do a full round of virtual golf for some giveaways and some prizes. So who doesn't like giveaways and prizes? That's what I'm saying. But if this was good for you and you enjoyed the podcast, definitely let me know. As always, this is the Weekend Golfer, where everyday golfers like you and me, we get our voice. You guys stay blessed.